Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. We are in the studio of WKTV today, and the spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, and individuals can help us thrive in our life. I have a very special guest for you today. So I am getting more guests to help us get through this season, especially if you're working from home, if you have your children home on vacation. It seems like months now. But I have a special guest called Shandy Longcore from Embracing Imperfections. I had to get that down. And she's going to be on the show today to talk about mental health, some of the things that we might be dealing with, the situation with COVID. So I want to welcome you to the show, Shandy. All right, and I'm excited to have you here because I really feel like I have a story to tell too about what I dealt with this summer. But I want to talk about what your company's doing, or your organization, and how you can help people that are watching today. And
yeah, for sure. We at Embracing Imperfections, which is soon to be a nonprofit, we're just waiting to hear on our fun little.
It's a little behind in the state today, right?
Yeah. I mainly focus in schools and any group, I guess. So companies and churches and things like that as well. But you'll mainly, when COVID isn't happening, you'll find me in person at schools sharing my suicide story in hopes to ultimately prevent suicide. And so, on the heels of that comes a really healthy conversation about mental health, right? And taking care of ourselves. And you all should be proud of your students here in West Michigan. They do a great job brainstorming mental health strategies.
Well, yeah, and I think they deal with that because I think Be Nice is popular today, and that's the Mental Health Foundation. And then I think something else, Community of Hearts is now pretty much out there to helping. But we're finally addressing a really seriously mental illness. We've kind of shunned away from it, and it looks like you're not very strong if you can't handle life, right?
See, that's interesting that you say it like that. When speaking, I love to show a certain slide, and what it is it's a scan of two different brains. One brain is of someone that is depressed, and one scan of a brain of someone that's not. And I like to show that slide to take down the stigma that's surrounding mental health, that it's not something, physical. It is. It's a chemical imbalance many times. And so you just can't get over it the next day. So recognizing that we should be treating our mental health. Say if you really are struggling, like you would a broken arm, you would go to the doctor for a broken arm. And so I'm encouraging folks to just not only do the general, mental health strategies that set us up for success every day, but also when you can't get out of bed, when you can't stop the tears or the anger and things like that, to seek professional help, because that's what it may need or may require.
Well, and I think to share my story, was when COVID hit, back in March. Nobody knew how long it was going to last. And I'm a big networker. I interview people in person normally. Yeah. And all that kind of stuff. And so everything stopped. And so my whole life flipped. And it wasn't, even when I went out to the store, I got this wall from people because everybody thought I was a leper, like I had some disease, right? So I made it that. I found out how much we need each other for communicating. And so then I was doing okay, and then the riots hit. And then the riots hit, and all of a sudden it became bigger than life. My whole way of living, my whole, the uncertainty of that. My hallmark life that I grew up, a charmed life, was pretty much in threat. It was like, what are we going to do now? How are we going to live? And I didn't want what they were offering. I don't want that kind of, violence. I was like, to fix things, right? Okay, so then I went, and my whole job changed, my interviews, everything. All of a sudden, I couldn't function. I was just falling apart.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting fact to be able to say that. Show me someone who's not been affected by COVID. Like, that doesn't exist, right?
Right.
A lot of our worlds went completely upside down, including myself. I was finally living out feel is my why and my life calling, and sharing in schools. And I think in March I had like 7 schools on the docket for in-person assemblies. I had just finished a 900-person assembly and felt like I was really, eliciting change or opening minds and hearts, and then wham. So Pamela, you're not alone. And many people have had that as well. I think what has helped people is not only acknowledging the concept, yes, of mental health. We're now, instead of it being like this thing that sometimes people talked about, people had to fast forward and really address it, right? Because we're isolating, nothing's the same for people. And everywhere you go, like you said, you felt like you were treated like a leper.
Right. We had to wear a mask. I felt like the police were everywhere watching me. I felt like I was being watched all the time. And social media just exploded. It's like what was happening in Chicago felt like it was happening to my neighbors. You know what I mean? Everything was closer in. I don't know if anybody else experienced that.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and you're not alone in that. And I think what a lot of people come back to is, I like to call them like the circles of control. When I'm really struggling, and I'll talk to teenagers about this too. Sometimes you have to actually identify what you yourself have control over. And it tends to be how you respond to things, how you feel, that type of thing, and what you do about it. In the beginning of COVID, someone gave me this nugget, and I think it helps a lot of people. And it's this: are you the thermometer or are you the thermostat? And the idea is, think about that, right, for a moment. Thermometer reacts to its environment around it, right? And it kind of feeds into that same temperature of what's around it. Whereas a thermostat sets the temperature, sets the tone, sets the culture, sets the feel. And we kind of all had to have a come to moment of, who am I going to be, through this pandemic, And so, but with that said, it's not easy.
But my thought was, when I guess, and I had some friends I clung to. I needed that connection, and but I was looking I thought 5 steps ahead, and if that is that normal? I meant, like, this has to happen. I didn't see that part. All I saw was that. Yeah. And then somebody says, for that to happen, this would have to happen. This would have to happen. This would happen. But I didn't want to hear that. All I saw was, I lost like 25 pounds. I couldn't eat at all. Yeah. And I was like shocked that was nice that you lost 20. People are like, well, that must be nice. No, literally, I couldn't even open up my mouth to chew because of just freaking out that my whole world was going to be over, that I was going to have to figure this all out alone. Right.
It's definitely been heavy. And, interesting enough, when speaking in schools, I have the middle schoolers and high schoolers brainstorm what sets you up for success on just a general everyday basis, so that hopefully we have somewhat of a foundation when faced with real adversity, right? And here's what I find interesting: 9 out of 10 of their items typically you can do during COVID. And so they're things like, I know, I thought it was quite interesting when reflecting on it.
Well, what are they?
Right. Things we know we just don't want to do. We have to force ourselves to do it. So exercise, eating right, yoga, meditation, journaling, music, being in nature, getting in the sun when it's out in West Michigan.
Yeah, really, that is.
Yeah, all of those things. And then connecting with friends is the one with the asterisks nowadays, right? So we have to connect, obviously, much more in a digital format, which is not wanted, and we need connection. And let's be honest, when we're born, babies will be labeled fail to thrive if they're not literally touched and loved. And here we are trying to survive at a 6 feet distance, right? So we're really combating this virus, and I think acknowledging it for what it is. This is tough,
What are students? Tell me real quick. I want to know about the students. What are their thoughts on when you start talking suicides? What are their reaction, or maybe do they come up to you and say, I had thoughts like that too? What are you hearing from them?
So, to be honest with you, it's alarming in the sense how much suicide affects them on a general everyday basis. When I'm done speaking, kids will come to me and they want to share their story with me. And they're so sad. And it's, my dad this, or my cousin this, or I had 2 friends last year. It is the second leading cause of death for 14 to 24-year-olds. I mean,
we did a veterans celebration event. We were able to plan that before this other lockdown. But anyways, we were raising money for veterans. Their suicide rate is up to 24 a day. All right, but what I discovered by the gentleman that we were raising money for, Jerry Longcore, he has a Tango 3 organization. But anyways, he said that one suicide affects 100 people.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it affects, and then you have a higher chance of committing suicide yourself. You know what I'm saying? Your family members, when you have a family member to commit suicide. And they can prove this. They can prove it.
Yeah, it raises the percent. And by the way, nowadays, that's a kind of a shift and change. Instead of, we commit murder, we commit crimes, we no longer commit suicide. We die by suicide or die from depression. That's like been a nice change for people when you're the family member that's still here.
Right.
That's a nice change for people. And even a local nonprofit called I Understand is doing a great job trying to change the actual definition of suicide. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. What about you? Well, what might caused you to? Were you in a depression?
So my story is so sad, but has obviously a happy ending in the fact that I'm still here. And when speaking, I actually share with the middle schoolers and high schoolers, or maybe I'm at a corporate event or whatnot, but I actually share with them that while my story is a way of getting your attention, it's actually not what I want you to take away from our time together today. But so for me, it was a combination of a really bad day, impulsivity. I was 10 years old, and likely a undetected mental health situation that was
You were only 10?
I was only 10, and it was in a very, very dramatic way. How
did you even know what a suicide was? How did you, you were, playing, was it like, why did you even know to do it, right?
I probably didn't. I just knew that I could no longer handle how big my world had gotten, especially that day. And I was looking for a way out, and I quickly found it. I didn't feel, to add to like the bad day and likely a mental health issue, I didn't feel pretty. And the night before, I actually chopped off my hair. And in my adolescent mind, I was going to go to my mom. She was going to buy me a wig. And
I know these crazy thoughts going here.
Oh, I know. I had it all planned out. She was going to buy me a wig, and that was going to make me pretty, and that was going to check off one of those boxes. And
you have beautiful hair. I'm like,
no, yeah. Thankfully, your hair grows back, right? And she went to work early the next day, and I was left alone to kind of figure it out, right? And I was supposed to help out at our hardware store. We as a family owned a hardware store where I'm from. And my dad came home to see what I was up to because I wasn't there for my shift. And instead of seeing basically my cry for help, we landed in a major argument. Like many parents, when they come in and they see that their child had chopped their hair, they don't necessarily go to, how are you feeling? What in the world did you do to your hair? So,
right.
And then, so that was kind of just the icing on the cake, was the argument with my dad. And I just didn't see a way out. So when talking, or in general, I like to encourage people that you can absolutely get through what I call the millisecond. And I've spoken with people who have jumped from bridges, and they're very blessed to be alive as well. The moment they jump, how do they feel? They wish they would not have done it.
Yeah.
Right? Leading up.
Yeah.
Thinking,
yes.
I don't want to live. Nobody cares about me. I'm a burden to people's lives. And then they do it, and they wish they wouldn't have. And that was exactly the case when I took a 30-30 hunting rifle to my chest. I had the same exact thing. What happened in my case, I got an anatomy lesson wrong or right, if you want to say. I switched the rifle from my left to my right, and I fired.
You shot yourself?
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, your father
Yeah.
must have been, your parents must have
Oh,
been.
it was, so here's where I am super blessed and lucky and have a lot of takeaways from my life since then is, so my mom, I was alone, right? My dad went back to work, fuming over what I had done, and I was left alone to ponder my next move. And I obviously made the wrong one. I just wanted to be done and be gone. And keep in mind, again, impulsivity and 10 years old and not reaching out. I didn't reach out. I didn't write a note. So here I am. I did it, and I was shocked to be alive. And then I was groveling for my life. And I was blessed and lucky that my mom came home, who is a nurse, she came home from work early that day because she had gone in early, right? When she was supposed to be getting me my wig, right?
Yeah, really.
I know.
So
So
you went, and
yeah,
so it's your parents. So what did they do to help you afterwards? I mean, did you go into therapy? What was the result on that?
yeah, no, this is a long time ago, but we absolutely went into therapy, and the mental health world has come a long ways.
Right.
So this is, mind you, 1991. So I was 10 years old. Nowadays is when I didn't really deal with in therapy and work through it in therapy until I was a young adult, and then I was able to kind of take the layers apart, figure it out, feel it, and rebuild, and really kind of fall in terms of love myself, and
Right.
and then still hid it. I hid the story for 25 years.
Well, I understand that, and so I understand people that have said that too. And one of the things they say is that they are afraid they're going to get, you know, this is going to get out, or it's going to
Yeah,
be put on the record. So it's calling them
right.
out, and you're going to be limited in life. Like you won't be able to do certain things. Like maybe you won't
Yeah,
even get, do have the Second Amendment. Maybe you'll never be able to own a gun. Maybe you won't ever to work for a school system because you had mental something. What about those stigmas that still people are afraid to go and get help because they're afraid that they could have career choices that they won't be able to make because it's on record that you had a breakdown, or you had something wrong with you mentally.
yeah. I I can only speak for my experience is, I was honest and with my family. The police report, I think, was actually written that it was an accidental shooting. So I can relate to that being a confusing time. But I can tell you that career wise, I lived out a very successful career here at a local fitness endeavor, and I did that for 14 years, and and I'm now in the speaking and a founder of a nonprofit. So from my personal experience, it hasn't negatively affected me. But I can understand people's fear, but I think at the core of everything, we have to take care of us before we can take care of other people and before we can do what we're called to do on this earth. And so that's actually what happened to me is I was basically called out. Like, if you're not sharing your God-given story or your life story, what are you doing? Like, why not? Like, so I had to quiet my inner critic to be able to share my story, knowing that in theory could help other people.
Right.
So
Did you have siblings?
yep, I have an older brother, 4 years older than me. Yep.
Okay.
I think he was at football practice that day.
Well, I'm sure. But and males don't have it. They have a tendency to not share as much as girls,
Yeah,
females. And I
yeah.
think they have a more chance of having a successful suicide. Am I
Yes.
correct? Right.
Yes, for sure. Yep, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Males, that's a tough, it's interesting. I had a board meeting just last night, and one particular member of my board, who happens to be a male, saw that slide that I'm talking about where you compare the two brains. And for him, when he struggles with his own mental health, that just took the temperature down to realize, like, oh, I don't have to be macho to get over this the next day. There is something physically going on. There's a chemical imbalance. And so, Hipple, I don't know if you recall who he is, the retired Lions quarterback who lost his son to suicide.
Yeah.
And he too attempted to take his own life by exiting from a car. He is a speaker like myself. he goes around with that same, here you have a macho football player saying, guys, you have to pay attention to this. It's just like a cancer. It can sneak up and bite you and kill you if you're not careful.
You can get spiraling out of control. And I think when you're younger, you never see that this feels like forever, that there's no way out. Like you said, it feels like forever. And you don't have the maturity. These young kids don't have the maturity to know, like a breakup, social media, right? You're not going to be with these people in 10 years. I promise you. You won't even be with them in 5 years. Do you know what I mean? But their friends, their siblings, their everything, that's all they know.
Yeah. And that's what we feel. We feel those big feelings, and that's all we can see, and that's hopefully through, this initiative is hopefully painting a picture because of my life as an example. I love living here in West Michigan. I have twin boys that are 10 years old. My husband and I have been married for 13 years. I'm very blessed to be here. And I'm here to tell you that I have way more better days than bad. And that you can get through that sticky spot, it's not easy, and I don't discredit that. But I think seeking out options and seeking out a counselor, a teacher to help you through that is key.
I went through some stressful times when I was a teenager, the holidays, because I just, you know what I mean? That whole, you get excited and the letdown, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we all fall in roles when we get with family. So what advice can you give some of these kids out there, or even adults that are going to be going through this?
I do think, especially this year, if there's any year to sit down as a family and talk about, what expectations are and how, and acknowledging, everything that we have going on with this pandemic and the restrictions, and that you might, a lot of parents or families are not getting together with extended family and things like that. I think sitting down and having what might be a tough or awkward conversation is number one as a family. Let's acknowledge it for what it is. This is tough. Let's just throw that out there and then start the conversation about, okay, what are our options and how can we set ourselves up for the asterisks, and just, kids, I wish a lot of times they don't get the credit that is, should be afforded to them, because you'd be surprised what they would come up with when you ask them, how do you think we could make it special? Now I know, some people might be thinking, if I ask my teenager that, they're gonna, tell me something not nice, but when given an opportunity, you might be surprised, how you address it matters. But the other thing I want to throw out there is that outside has not been canceled. And if you have the right gear, and I'm just telling you, one simple walk or one path in nature or one walk on the beach, we have this beautiful, huge lake,
Right. It's true.
Let's go there, And
well, they say that plants excrete, something in the air that helps us calm down, and our emotions. I mean, people have said that, our expert plant people I've had on my show. They go, there's something about, they help you keep your anxiety, your depression, to be around nature, to be out there. And I think kids played more when they were younger. I played a lot outside.
Yeah, we were not distracted by, social media and all the other things. So yeah, for sure, getting outside, acknowledging what it is, and being creative. And, I think come up with something completely new as a family. Could be a new tradition this year. And just, I think by going through the effort of that communication, I think that will help everyone. And then the next step is actually doing it and following through. Like, nope, we're for sure going outside today, And
right.
Endorphins and serotonin levels, it's science. It's there. We have to, know that.
Well, I really think, I'm glad you're on the show, and I'd love to have you back. But I think about teaching these kids how to become emotionally strong, that these are bumps on the road, things are going to have, we have this expectation of what our life should be like at a certain age. Like at 25, we should be here. At 30, I should be here. The whole world's, I'm getting calls all the time. The whole world's flipped upside down. Nobody's dating. Nobody's, everybody's kind of feel like life is moving fast, and they can't do anything. They can't go anywhere to make that happen. So what are your thoughts on that, on helping them?
Yeah, I think I am one of the biggest proponents of counseling because I know how much it's helped me. And furthermore, nowadays, what you're going to hear from counselors that are talking through a screen to their clients is teenagers, for example, are much more willing, and our young adults are much more willing to have a conversation with a counselor with that kind of buffer of the screen. So I'm here to say to start or consider the counseling route, just because you'd be surprised just voicing what is going on and different strategies that they may have for you. I would say that's the biggest thing that I would suggest for people.
Okay, what would you give, you know, you're trying to break the barriers of the stigma about mental, we say mental illness. I would just say like a bump in the road. It's not, mental illness is long, to me, people think long term, right?
Yeah.
But it could be just seasonal. Maybe you went through a divorce, maybe just with COVID, you're struggling and whatever, and you're building and actually going through something difficult. It builds muscle, emotional muscle, don't you think? And where you can overcome it, and then what? I feel a lot stronger than about.
For me, I have to have an arsenal of coping strategies. You know, I have to know what are some go-to things that when something big hits me, like for me, it was when I found out my kids are going remote learning. We don't do that very well. So that
Right.
For other people, they may laugh at me, but for other people, maybe it's really big things like divorce and things like that. So I would start researching and understanding and trying coping strategies. For me, breathing techniques, getting in prayer, getting in meditation, some of those things that sound so corny that people are like, what are you talking about? Until you actually try it, like a guided meditation. You'd be surprised how much that can just take you down. You know, you and I were at a conference actually not that long ago where yoga took us through what most people felt like was an awkward breathing exercise. But when we were done, we were all like, whoo, we needed that. You know?
Right. Isn't it amazing how simple breathing can calm us down a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and someone might say, like, some of my responses are so cliche, they're right there, but here's the deal. Till you're in that moment and you actually try it, it's like that's like the tipping point, right? Don't call it like, you know, oh, that's silly. Meditation is silly or yoga is silly until you try it in a moment of conflict or crisis or troublesome, you know?
That's right. So can they reach you, and what you can offer some of the people that can use your services?
Yeah. So us at Embracing Imperfections, what we mainly do is we like to speak at assemblies or companies, either in person or on Zoom, sharing, you know, my story and the takeaways and what would have helped me and what did help me. Because it's not very often you get to speak with someone, right, that's been through that, right? And so I'm available, especially via Zoom right now. So it's easy to get a hold of us. You can look up our information at embracingimperfections.org, or you can just email me or call me, and my information is right on the website. 616-516-8281 is my direct line, and it's Shandy at embracingimperfections.org is my email.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thank you for being here today. We'll have you back on. And I appreciate you giving our viewers a little bit of advice and sharing a little bit about your story and bringing out mental illness. I wish we got to come up with a new word like that, because that seems like forever. But it's like people there, it's seasonal. You know, we're all experiencing. We're not alone that we're having these thoughts, right? And I think that's what wakes up everybody else. But thank you so much for being with me, with us, Shandy. And we will catch you next time. This is Pamela Keim from Grand Tap Media Business TV. Bye-bye.
Bye.